Oh man, check this out. This beautiful vegetable beef stew. Give this a try. This is fantastic at any time of the year and super in the winter. Beautiful, rich, full-bodied. This is one that you're not going to regret trying. Man, that flavor is unbelievable. Well, hello! Welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode of Texas Cooking Today, we're going to be making an exciting old world dish. This is called vegetable beef stew. Now, this is something I was raised with, and of course I know that my mother was taught this by her mother, and her mother was taught this by her mother. And in researching this, I found out that, you know, there's no one nation that really claims this dish. That almost every nation on earth has created something similar to this. And so really I can't, you know, attribute it to one group, but it is an old world dish and it just dates back centuries. And basically, because it's simple to prepare, it's done in a single pot and it's absolutely delicious. So here's where we take a very humble dish and we get 5-star flavors from it. So I'll tell you what, come over this way. I'm going to go over all of our ingredients and we're going to make us the most delicious vegetable beef stew you've ever tasted. Now, when you're making a vegetable beef stew, of course, it starts with that beef, that cut of meat that we're going to be using. Now, the cut of meat that I have out here is chuck. Chuck lends itself to this dish really well because of all of the marbling in the meat. There's a lot of fat that runs through it. There's a lot of bands of heavy connective tissue that contain gelatinous material that is absolutely perfect for when it comes to stewing. So you're going to want to pick out a piece of meat that's like this. You don't want anything that's going to be too lean. If it's like a sirloin, then that's going to have a tendency to seize up a bit more and it's going to be tough and dry, and it won't be nearly as soft as this nor as moist as this when you're eating it. Now, our other items, I have out here a grouping of items that are both fibrous as well as dense. The vegetables that work best for stewing are going to be things that either you want to break down into a very soft form so it doesn't matter, like the tomatoes and the onions, or other items that you want to have stand up to the heat, and that is because they're either, you know, like a root stock item like this, a hearty root, potatoes and carrots. These are dense, they take long cooking better. Fibrous vegetables like this is fennel right here. Some people call it anise. Okay, you can also use celery if you prefer. Any real fibrous vegetable like this works well in stewing because it takes a long time to break those fibers down to make it edible, so it's a good thing for stewing. Also, we're going to be adding in some garlic. Now, so you'll understand my proportions here, and I'll also, before I go into proportions, I want to mention wine. You can put in wine in this dish, any kind of wine you want. White, red, white Zinfandel, what I'm using here, blush, anything. Alright, whatever you normally drink, toss it in there. It's fine. Give it a pint. Or, if you like beer better, put a beer in there. These are commonly used, items like this are commonly used for stewing because it just brings in a more rich flavor, and it also helps to pair the dish to anything you might happen to be drinking. And I also have back here some pepper and salt. We're going to be using that for flavoring the dish as well as the garlic. Now, proportions. What I have over here on the slice of beef, this is a 2 1/4 pound chuck roast. Normally I was looking just for 2 pounds, and that's basically the ratio I'm looking for. 2 pounds of the chuck, and then on my potatoes I want 2 pounds of potatoes, 1 pound of carrots, and then when it comes to something fibrous, you're going to be measuring that by the cup. So I'm looking for about 2 cups worth of chopped fibrous material, whether it be celery or fennel or whatever. You don't have to use these. You can leave that out altogether. I like to use it because I cooked up some fennel bulbs the other day and I want to use up the rest of the stalks, and this is a great way to do that. It's best to stew these. And 1 pound of onions also. So we have here, this is 30 ounces of So, tomatoes. Also, on the beverage, I like to use no more than about a pint of whatever I'm going to put in there, if it's beer, wine, or whatever. And you can also just omit that. And then I'm also going to be putting in some water with this. And generally, when I make this, I use anywhere from 1.5 to 2 quarts of water. And this makes an absolutely huge batch of food. So, if you want to cut this recipe in half, for smaller family or for just having less because you're a single person, that's a smart thing to do. Now remember, the way I teach here is the setup method, and that's where we get everything cut and ready to go before anything is cooked. So I've got a lot of processing of food to do here. Now I have a roast here that is just too thick to make good cubes of for stewing. So what I'm going to have to do is make some slices that are about the thickness of what I need, and then cut those down in half to compensate for the thickness of that roast, and then cut some of these nice 3/4 inch cubes from that. Isn't that nice? Very simple, and that's what we're looking for the whole roast. Now, the first thing I'm going to do before I process these potatoes, onions, or carrots is I want to remove these outside layer from them. Now, you don't have to do this. You can leave the skin intact. However, on mine, I really don't like it, okay? I like to go ahead and leave that out. So I'm going to use a vegetable peeler to just very quickly remove the outer, the peel on this potato. The same way on those carrots. The onions, we're going to use a knife and cut those down. So, see how I just go after those vegetables with this thing? Just keep doing that, folks. Let me get this over just a little bit. Going right at that. Now for processing an onion, let me tell you some tricks about onions. When it comes to cutting up an onion, you don't want to cut the root off. The minute you cut that root, you're going to have problems. It's going to start weeping a lot of the juices from the onion, and that's going to be really, trust me, problematic for you. So cut off that stem end, the part that would have been facing up towards the sky with the stalk growing from it. And then make a very gentle light cut up the side. And what I'm trying to do is just to cut through any outer layers that might be thin, like that one right there. And that allows me to pull back the paper on that onion and to peel it back just a little bit easier. That trick. On your potatoes, what I want to do is usually potatoes are kind of wider in one spot, you know, and narrower like this one is. And what I want to do is to put it up on its edge and run my knife. See how I hold it very gently, both sides, and gently lower my knife through it to divide it into two. And even if those sides aren't equal like I've done here, it's still going to work out for you. This one, and what I'm looking for is the same rough 3/4 inch cube that we prepared like in the pieces of meat. So something similar in size. And that one's a bit large, but it'll still cook down and soften. Sometimes carrots are really thin in one part, really fat in another part, and when you have a situation like that, I recommend cutting that sucker like so. And that way, the bites that I get of carrot aren't too large in the soup that I'm making. And do that other one. Now, here's another way of doing this. See, there's where I made my original score line. See how I lay them flat? A little easier. Now, if you'll notice, when I'm cutting something like an onion, something that's real wide like this, I have a stroking motion, in other words, a sliding motion with the knife, rather than an up and down chop. Using my fingers, my knuckles here as my guide, all the way through, all the time. Now here I'm making roughly 1/4 inch thick slices with this anise or fennel. This is the stalk of the plant. You can put the bulb in this also if you want. And this also imparts just a wonderful flavor. Now I'm putting some of the leaves in there also, and those leaves are filled with flavor. And as I get into the narrower stalks, I can cut little longer pieces. And right there is about 1 cup total. And that's about all I want of that. And it has a really potent flavor, so that's the reason I'm not going to go overboard on it. So there we have all of our vegetables are cut up, and this dish is ready to get underway. So let's move around to the stove and get started up on this fabulous tasting dish. Now we have finished cutting up all of our meat, vegetables, everything is processed and ready to go with the exception of the garlic, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. There's no rush on it. Now I have over here an 8-quart stock pan. So a very large stock pan is what I'm using. A couple of gallons worth of fluid can fit that. And you're going to need a big one like this. Like I said before, if you cut this recipe in half for smaller amounts. This was the way I was raised making it, and I love this, so I want as much of it as I can get. Now there's my beef, and I'm going to take some olive oil, and I'm just going to add it to that. I want to put underneath it a high flame. And I'm putting in about 1/4 of a cup of olive oil there. Take a spoon. Now, I'm going to add just a tiny amount of salt as I'm cooking the beef for the sole purpose of bringing out some of the flavors of the beef. And I start by cooking this because, and that's only maybe 1/4 teaspoon or slightly more. I started out cooking this way because we want to develop flavors in the beef, some browning in that beef, and that adds to the overall savory flavor of this dish. It's been about 7 minutes now, and if you'll notice, there's not much pink or red left on any of that meat, just little bits here and there. So that means when I'm down to the point where I'm not seeing much red on my meat, and I've got that flavor development going on there, that it's time to go ahead and put in the vegetables. So I'm just going to take these and pour it right on in there. On top of that, things, tomatoes and the juice. Let's put in that wine. Remember, I've still got this on high, so I'm ready to put in water, and I want to bring my water up to cover those vegetables. There's my 2nd quart of water. I want to just start pouring it in until it's okay. I'm pretty much there, and I used all but 1 cup of liquid. Now I need to go ahead and get that stirred in. Get everything mixed in there well. And this is beautiful. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish up by adding in that last cup of water. Now I'm going to go ahead at this point and I'm going to put in some salt. And that right there is about 1.5 teaspoons. I'm going to grind in some black pepper just to begin the early development of flavor. And I'm only going to put in this roughly 1/2 teaspoon, a little more maybe. There we go. Now let's go ahead and process some garlic to go down. And remember, the one truth of garlic, you can always add more, but you can't take it out if you've already put it in there, okay? Now for processing our garlic, this is very simple. We don't have to do any slicing or anything fancy on this. However, I don't really like that scab end being in my stews, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that off each and every one of these. Even though it's probably going to soften up by the time the stewing is finished, I guess you could just call me anal retentive about it. I don't want that part in my food. I don't want the appearance of it or anything else in there. Now, I want to give these a good firm crush to kind of break them apart. And I can even knife it a little bit, but I don't need to do much more than that. And the reason being is this is all going to cook down into very, very soft components within that dish. So it's not going to be something that has to be diced up. Okay, so all we have to do is just take that, put it right over there into our stew. You know, this has an incredible look, and even the beginning odor that's just starting to come out of it is really neat. And look at all that color. The nutrient value that is incorporated into this right here is absolutely staggering. So you want something that's super nutritious, super health food, and delicious. Man, I don't know many dishes that are better for it than this. Now, once your pot has come up to a full boil like this, and it's been just a little over 30 minutes of heating to get it here, then you're going to want to give it a last stir, and I'm going to cover it and reduce my temperature to low on this and just allow this to simmer. But I do like to bring it to a boil first when I do that. So, lid on, reduce your heat, and we're going to give this 1 hour to begin with. And it might go a little longer than that. It'll probably go into about an hour and a half. But it's a great way of doing this. Now, as I mentioned before, if you want to thicken this, bring your lid back just like so, and leave it that way for the entire cooking period. It's going to thicken that sauce right up for you. Now, this has been cooking for approximately 1 hour. It's just been gently simmering. And something I wanted to show you about this, let me pull up some of these potatoes. If you will notice, the potatoes still have very sharp edges to them. Let me get some more up here. And it's these sharp edges that we're looking to eliminate. When I can get potatoes that come up and they don't have real crisp edges like that, but they're kind of rounded and it's looking a bit furry and white on the outside, you see how that's still really firm, it's not breaking apart easily. Well, that's not cooked as much as I want. And that potato really tells me when the vegetables are cooked enough. Also, these onions will become a little bit more limp, as well as so will that fennel. It'll become a little softer too. So we just need to let this keep on stewing and do what it does. So it could end up being, hour and a half, 2 hours. That's the thing, is every pot of stew just kind of takes the amount of time it takes. And when it's done, in the event you decide that you would like to go ahead and thicken up your stew, you can also use a thickener. Now, I have here 1/4 of a cup of cornstarch. That's 3 tablespoons. Cornstarch is a wonderful thickener. It gives a nice, smooth texture. At the same time, it's really easy to use. All you have to have is some cold water, your cornstarch. Simply mix the two together. Just a little more water. So at this point, it's just a matter of, do I want a thickener or not? In this case, I'm doing this only to show you. Normally, I don't bother with. All I have to do is give that a few minutes, and it's going to thicken this right up. It's going to give it a nice, full-bodied texture to that liquid. Less watery. Now, I've given this about 3, maybe 4 minutes now since I put that cornstarch in. And look how much it's covering the vegetables now, how well it's coating it, and how that liquid has thickened up really nice. It's no longer watery. Even the appearance of the boil has changed. It's taken on the appearance of something that has thickened, bubbling. So, does a wonderful job. If you want it even thicker, just add a little bit more. Really easy to do. So don't worry about using something like cornstarch in your soup or in your stew. It's not a bad thing to use. It's not an unhealthy thing to use, and it does a fabulous job at what it does. Well, now that our stew has been prepared, all we have to do is go ahead and get this served up. Got a nice bowl here. As you can see, the work on this is everything up front, just a bunch of cutting. After that, it's a bunch of waiting, but it's well worth it. It's one of the most delicious dishes I know of, and it is so simple. That beef is still juicy. It is so tender. It's all about choosing the right cut. The flavors, just this beautiful harmony of flavor there. It's so delicious. Please, give this one a try. Then I would like to say thank you. Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today. And to my subscribers, thank you very much. And if you haven't subscribed, well, what are you waiting for? Please do. We've got great recipes. You folks have a good day. Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today, the show where you can get great recipes and the best techniques are taught. Please subscribe to Texas Cooking Today, where you will always find something hot and ready to eat.